Teen stops to help stranded driver. Had no idea he was a billionaire. What would you do if you saw someone stranded on the road with a flat tire? For one teenage boy, this simple choice became the turning point of his life. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. The sun pressed down on the pavement like a heavy blanket. Heat shimmered off the cracked sidewalks, and the streets buzzed with traffic and impatience. People walked with purpose, eyes forward, eager to escape the thick summer air. Jamal was not in a hurry. 16 years old, wearing a faded backpack and worn sneakers, he made his usual walk home after school. He passed the same tired buildings and dusty storefronts, each one a familiar piece of his daily life. He waved at the barber sweeping outside and nodded at the grocer unloading crates. Nothing seemed unusual, until he saw the car. It sat awkwardly on the shoulder just ahead. A sleek black Mercedes, polished to a shine, its hazard lights blinking steadily. A flat tire leaned against the asphalt like a wounded limb. Next to it stood a man in a suit, sweating through his collar and fumbling with a wrench. Jamal slowed. People walked by without a glance. Drivers changed lanes without concern. It was not their problem, and maybe it was not his either. But Jamal watched for another moment, something pulling at him. He crossed the street. "You need some help?" he asked. The man looked up, surprised. He had clearly been at this for a while. His hands were clumsy and his patience was wearing thin. "Honestly, yes. I was not expecting anyone to stop." Jamal nodded. "You got a jack?" "I think so. I should. Somewhere in the trunk." "Let's take a look." Jamal circled the car and opened the trunk. Inside was a tangle of items that had no business being together. A blanket, a pair of golf shoes, a small tool bag. And under all that, a jack that had probably never been touched. Jamal pulled it out and moved back to the front. "You really know how to do this?" the man asked, still catching his breath. "My dad showed me. He used to fix up cars. Said if you drive, you should know how to keep the wheels turning." The man gave a short laugh. Smart guy. Jamal was already getting to work. He dropped to one knee and slid the jack into place, then started loosening the bolts. His hands moved with certainty. He barely glanced up. The man watched him, slightly in awe. There was a quiet confidence in Jamal's movements, like this was something he had done 100 times. "You in school?" the man asked. "Yeah, senior year. Just finished today. Planning college?" "Trying. We will see." The wrench clicked into place as Jamal knelt beside the luxury car, already halfway through the job. His hands moved with purpose, each motion efficient and precise. The spare tire sat ready, balanced beside him. Despite the heat and the grime of the roadside, Jamal carried himself with the ease of someone who had done this more times than he could count. The man in the suit stood nearby, a little stiff, unsure what to do with his hands. He watched quietly as Jamal loosened the bolts, cracked a grin, and muttered, "They really cranked these tight. You sure someone didn't glue them on?" That pulled a laugh from the man, unexpected and genuine. "Wouldn't be surprised. I think the car has more computers than I do." Jamal glanced up. "Looks nice, though. Never seen one of these this close." "You like cars?" the man asked. Jamal gave a small nod, tightening the jack and lifting the frame. "Yeah, my dad used to mess around with old ones. Nothing like this, though. Mostly busted-up Chevys and beaters. He taught me everything I know. Said no one should be stuck just waiting when they can fix something themselves." The man's eyes lingered on the boy. There was no bitterness in his voice, only memory. The kind that wraps around old truths and makes them feel warm even when they sting. "Where's your dad now?" the man asked gently. Jamal hesitated, but kept working. "Past 2 years ago." Heart stopped out of nowhere. "We didn't even see it coming." "I'm sorry." Jamal shrugged. "Me too. He was a good guy. Worked hard. Never complained." There was something about the way Jamal said it. Simple. Direct. No drama. No expectation. Just a statement of fact, like the way the sky was blue or the car had a flat. The last bolt clinked against the pavement. Jamal swapped the tires, tightened everything, and started lowering the jack. The whole thing had taken less than 15 minutes, but in that time, something unspoken had shifted. Not in Jamal. He had just done what felt right, but in the man watching him. When the car was steady again, Jamal dusted his palms against his jeans and stood up. "There, you're good to go. Might want to get that other tire checked, though. Sometimes one goes, and the rest ain't far behind." The man chuckled again, more relaxed now. He stepped forward, reaching into his pocket. You really helped me out, Jamal. Let me give you something for your time. Jamal raised a hand before the wallet came out. It's fine. I didn't do it for that. I know, but I really mean it, Jamal said, and for the first time, there was a firmness in his voice. Not rude, just steady. It's just a flat. You needed help. I was here. That's enough. The man stopped mid-motion. He looked at Jamal, truly looked, and something in his face shifted. He slipped the wallet back into his pocket. You don't come across people like you very often, he said softly. Jamal gave a modest smile, as if unsure what to say to that. Compliments were harder to handle than bolts and tires. Anyway, he said, stepping back and slinging his backpack over one shoulder, you're set. Drive safe, all right? I will. Jamal turned, started walking away, his head low and his stride even. He didn't glance back. He didn't expect thanks, applause, or anything else. The man could have been anyone, and Jamal would have done the same. That fact alone struck Richard harder than anything else had that day. He stood there for a moment longer, hand resting on the hood of his car, eyes following the boy's shrinking figure as he disappeared into the streets. Around him, the city continued its rhythm, cars passed, horns sounded, and life resumed. But inside his mind, something kept circling. Not the tire. Not the inconvenience. Not the heat. The boy. Jamal. He was not loud. He didn't talk much. But there was power in that silence. Integrity. An energy that didn't shout but stood tall. Richard climbed back into the car and started the engine. The dashboard lit up, everything running smoothly now. He could have driven away and left it at that. Maybe a nod of gratitude, a story to tell at dinner, a reminder to carry a better toolkit. But he didn't pull off right away. Instead, he sat there, hands still on the wheel, staring out through the windshield. He thought about the sincerity in Jamal's voice, the way he spoke about his father, the refusal to accept money. In a world where people angled for favors, where every conversation came with a price tag, Jamal had been different. Kindness with no hook. Richard knew something rare when he saw it. He reached for his phone. Get me the name of the local high schools around Central and Ninth, he said when his assistant picked up. I need to find someone. You're still at the tire place? Came the confused reply. No, I'm on the move. Just do it. As he pulled into traffic, the blinking hazard lights finally off. The last image in his rearview mirror was that of a young man walking into the city's sun, unaware that the smallest decision of his day had just reshaped his future. And that future was coming faster than he knew. Inside the school, Jamal was just finishing his last class of the day. He gathered his books, slung his backpack over one shoulder, and headed toward the exit. He wasn't in a hurry, not really. It was another typical afternoon, and he was already mentally moving on to the next task. Homework, maybe stopping by the garage if Mr. Ortiz needed help, just getting through the day like he always did. But when he stepped outside, the air felt a little different. The day seemed a little quieter, as if the city itself had slowed down to watch him. He shook it off, figuring it was just the heat playing tricks on him. As Jamal walked down the steps of the school and onto the sidewalk, a sleek black car pulled up beside him. His steps slowed, instinctively wary of anyone who might stop him on the street. But the man in the car wasn't the type to holler out from the driver's seat or pull at his attention. Instead, Richard Langston rolled down the window and offered a simple wave. Jamal? Richard called out, his voice calm, inviting. Jamal stopped, hesitant. He didn't recognize the man, but the car had the kind of polished shine that screamed expensive. The suit was sharp, and the man had a look about him that was hard to place. Yeah, Jamal answered, a little cautious. I'm Richard Langston, Richard said, extending his hand. We met a few days ago. You helped me with my flat tire. Jamal's brow furrowed, the memory slowly coming back to him. That car. The man in the suit. The tire. It clicked, and Jamal felt his muscles relax. Oh yeah, I remember you now. What's up? I've been thinking about that moment, Richard continued, his tone sincere. And I'd like to talk to you, if you have a minute. Jamal wasn't sure what to make of it. It wasn't every day someone wealthy pulled up to talk to you, much less someone who had a good reason to be curious. He glanced at the sidewalk behind him, then back at Richard. It was a weird situation, but Jamal didn't see any harm in it. Sure. What's on your mind? Richard smiled, opening the door of the car slightly and gesturing toward the passenger seat. Can we talk inside? It'll be quicker and easier. Jamal hesitated, but then nodded. He wasn't exactly sure why. but something about Richard's demeanor seemed genuine. He figured it wouldn't hurt to hear him out. He slid into the car, the cool air from the AC a sharp contrast to the summer heat outside. Richard shifted into drive and pulled into the flow of traffic. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the only sound being the hum of the engine and the faint street noise outside. "Thank you again for helping me with the tire," Richard began, his voice soft but purposeful. "Most people wouldn't have even stopped, but you did, and I couldn't get that out of my mind." Jamal shifted in his seat. "I wasn't trying to make a big deal out of it. I just helped because it seemed like the right thing to do." Richard nodded, his gaze focused ahead. "That's the part that stood out to me. You didn't ask for anything in return. That's rare, especially in my world." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "Your world?" "Yeah, people always want something. It's exhausting sometimes. You get used to it, but it's hard to find people who do things without expecting something back." Jamal thought about that for a moment. "Well, I guess if you help people just to get something in return, then it's not really helping." Richard glanced at him, the faintest smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Exactly." For a moment, there was quiet. Jamal had no idea what this conversation meant or where it was going, but something told him this was no ordinary meeting. "You know," Richard said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said about your dad. And I think there's more to you than meets the eye, Jamal." Jamal shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unsure where this was going. "What do you mean?" "I'm just saying," Richard said, his voice thoughtful, "there's a lot of potential in you. More than you might realize." Jamal wasn't sure how to respond. The sudden weight of Richard's words caught him off guard. But before he could say anything, the car slowed as Richard made a turn, heading toward a different part of the city. The conversation, it seemed, was only just beginning. Jamal had always been a skeptical person. Life had taught him early on that nothing came easy. Every favor had a price, every kindness a hidden agenda. People didn't just help others because it was the right thing to do. They helped because it got them something in return. But there was something about Richard Langston that didn't sit right with Jamal's usual sense of caution. The man seemed too genuine, too sincere. And as they drove deeper into the city, with the buildings growing taller and the streets quieter, Jamal couldn't help but wonder what was really going on here. The car came to a stop at a traffic light. Jamal glanced out the window. The city had changed since he was a kid. He could see the gleaming towers, the luxury stores with their polished windows. It all felt so far removed from the life he knew, one filled with cracked sidewalks and crowded streets. "Where are we headed?" Jamal asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Richard didn't immediately answer. Instead, he turned down a side street, one that led to a part of the city that Jamal hadn't seen much of before. There were fewer people on the sidewalks, and the buildings seemed newer, more pristine. It almost felt like another world. "You'll see in a minute," Richard said with a grin. The car slowed again, pulling into the parking lot of a sleek, modern building. Jamal raised an eyebrow as Richard parked. "This is where you work?" Jamal asked, surprised. Richard nodded. "This is one of my offices. It's not the main one, but it's where I like to come when I need to think. It's quiet, away from everything else." Jamal felt a twinge of discomfort. He wasn't used to places like this. The polished floors, the modern architecture, it all seemed so out of place for someone like him. "I don't know about this, Mr. Langston," Jamal said, the doubt creeping into his voice. "I'm not sure why you brought me here." Richard turned off the engine and looked at him. "You know, Jamal, you're an impressive young man. I don't say that lightly. There's something about you, the way you carry yourself, the way you help me without expecting anything in return. That's not something you find every day." Jamal shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Look, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm just a regular kid. I don't need anything fancy, just trying to get by." Richard chuckled softly, but there was a knowing look in his eyes. "I get it. But sometimes, regular people like you are the ones who end up changing everything. You just don't know it yet." Jamal didn't understand. He wasn't sure what Richard was getting at, but it felt like he was talking about something bigger than just a flat tire. Something bigger than Jamal's world. "Look, Jamal," Richard said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "I've been in business for a long time. I've seen a lot of people come and go. But there's one thing I know. People with heart, people like you, are rare. And I think you have potential. Potential to do something more, something bigger than you realize." Jamal's mind raced. What was he talking about? Was this some kind of trick? Was he trying to get him to work for him or something? Jamal had heard too many stories about people who pretended to be kind only to take advantage later. He didn't trust easily, and right now, he didn't trust Richard. "I don't know what you're getting at, Mr. Langston," Jamal said, his tone guarded. "I'm just a kid trying to make it through school. I don't have time for anything else." Richard met his gaze, his eyes steady. "I'm not asking you to do anything, Jamal. I'm just offering you an opportunity. Something that could change your life, if you're willing to take it." The words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Jamal didn't know how to respond. An opportunity? What kind of opportunity? He'd never been one to chase after dreams, especially not ones that came with fancy cars or high-rise buildings. But something in Richard's eyes made him pause. There was no deception there, just something that felt like hope. Jamal didn't know what the offer was, but he knew one thing. Richard wasn't just another guy trying to sell him something. "I don't know what you're offering, but I don't want to get involved in something I can't handle," Jamal said honestly. Richard smiled, a look of understanding in his eyes. "I get it, and I respect that. I'm not here to push you into anything. But what if you could learn? What if you could gain new skills, be around people who could teach you things that would help you get ahead in life?" Jamal glanced out the window again. The streets outside were unfamiliar, but not unwelcoming. It wasn't the world he was used to, but there was something about it that pulled at him. Maybe it was the promise of something different, something better. Or maybe it was just curiosity. "I don't know," Jamal muttered, feeling torn. "I don't think I'm cut out for all of this. I just want to help my mom and finish school." Richard nodded, as if expecting that answer. "And that's noble, Jamal. But you don't have to choose one over the other. You can help your family and still have the chance to build something for yourself. You have the potential to do more than just get by. You could really make a difference." Jamal looked at him, his mind racing with questions. What was he really offering? And why him? Was this some kind of test? "Why me?" Jamal asked before he could stop himself. "There are plenty of other people out there. What makes me so special?" Richard's gaze softened. "Because I see something in you. Something most people miss. And that's why I'm offering you this chance. You don't have to take it, but think about it. And if you ever change your mind, I'll be here." Jamal sat in silence, processing the weight of Richard's words. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like there was something more out there for him. Jamal sat in the car, staring at Richard Langston, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Richard's words lingered in the air, almost as if they were pulling him in two directions at once. On one side, there was the world he knew, his humble life, his responsibilities at home, his school, and the odd jobs that helped him scrape by. It was a world that felt safe, even if it wasn't glamorous. It was the world where he had grown up, where everything had a rhythm and a routine. But on the other side, Richard had just offered him something he had never even considered. A chance to change everything. Jamal had always believed in hard work, in doing what needed to be done to get by. But now, sitting in this sleek car, staring at the pristine buildings around them, he couldn't help but feel a pull towards something more. Could he really have more? Could he build something bigger than the small world he knew? He rubbed his hand over his face, trying to make sense of it all. Richard wasn't asking for anything, not really. He wasn't offering a job in exchange for favors or a salary for tasks Jamal didn't want to do. It wasn't the kind of opportunity that would demand everything from him right away. It was simply an invitation to learn, to be around people who had succeeded, people who had knowledge to share. But Jamal couldn't help but wonder, what was the catch? Richard had been quiet, giving Jamal space to think. He respected that Jamal wasn't the kind of person to make snap decisions, that he would take time to consider the offer. After all, Richard knew how overwhelming it could be to have someone offer you a glimpse into a world you had never even imagined, let alone been a part of. "So, what do you think?" Richard asked softly, pulling Jamal from his thoughts. Jamal let out a deep breath. "I don't know. It's a lot to think about. My mom's depending on me, and I'm trying to keep things together at home. I'm not sure I can just drop everything for something I don't fully understand." Richard nodded, not at all surprised by Jamal's response. "That's fair. I'm not asking you to walk away from your responsibilities, Jamal. But think about it. What if you didn't have to choose between helping your family and making something of yourself? What if you could do both?" Jamal leaned back in his seat, his eyes still fixed on the city outside. He had spent his life thinking there was no way to break free from the cycle of struggle, that this was just how things were. Hard work was one thing, ambition was another. He had never thought of himself as the type of person who could aim for something bigger, something beyond the limitations of his circumstances. But Richard made it sound so simple. Maybe it was. I don't know how to even start something like that, Jamal said, almost to himself. I don't know anyone who's done anything like this. I don't even know if I'm smart enough for it. Richard smiled, the same calm, reassuring smile Jamal had seen when he first met him. It's not about being smart enough, Jamal. It's about having the right attitude, the right willingness to learn. You have that already. You've proven it. I wouldn't be offering this to you if I didn't believe in you. Jamal bit his lip. There it was again, Richard's confidence in him. It was a feeling he wasn't used to. People didn't look at him like that. Most people saw him as just another kid from the neighborhood. Maybe they saw him as a product of his environment, someone destined to stay there. But Richard didn't see the same limitations. He saw potential. I don't know if I'm ready for all this, Jamal muttered, looking at his hands. Richard was quiet for a moment before speaking again, his voice softer. You don't have to be ready, Jamal. You just have to be willing. Willing to take a step, willing to open yourself to new things. That's all it takes. You don't have to have everything figured out right now. The words sank in slowly. Jamal looked out the window again, watching the city pass by. It was beautiful in its own way, and for the first time, he wondered what it would be like to be a part of it. To have more than just enough. To have the kind of life that wasn't just about surviving. It wasn't just about the money, he realized. It wasn't about what he could gain or the lifestyle he could live. It was about the possibility, the opportunity to learn something new, to grow beyond what he had always known. Maybe that was the real offer Richard was giving him, the chance to see a bigger world. Jamal's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Richard's voice. I know this is a lot to take in. I'm not asking for a commitment right now, Jamal. Take your time. Think it through. If you want to learn more, if you want to be part of something bigger than you've ever known, I'm here. But only if you're ready. Jamal's heart was racing now, his mind working overtime. He had always been a hard worker, always done the right thing by his family. But what if there was more to life than this? What if, for once, he didn't have to struggle just to get by? What if he could learn from people who had been where he wanted to go? I'm not saying yes yet, Jamal said, his voice steady. But I'll think about it. I'll think about what you said. Richard gave him a respectful nod. Take all the time you need, Jamal. I'm not going anywhere. As the car rolled to a stop in front of the school, Jamal's mind was still racing. This was more than just a flat tire. This was a chance to change everything, to break free from the expectations that had always been placed on him. But was he ready to take that step? Was he ready to leave his old world behind? For the first time, he wasn't so sure. But he knew one thing. The choice was his. The next few days felt like a blur to Jamal. He couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with Richard Langston. It haunted him in quiet moments, in between schoolwork, when he was doing chores at home, and even while hanging out with his friends. The weight of that offer lingered over him, like a cloud that wouldn't dissipate. Jamal had never been one to dream too big. He had always kept his head down, focused on the here and now, the immediate tasks that needed to be done. His life had always been about making it through the day, one step at a time. He never had the luxury of thinking too far ahead, especially when the future felt so uncertain. But now, there was an unsettling possibility that he couldn't shake. What if Richard was right? What if there was more to life than just getting by? Jamal's fingers traced the edge of the school desk, his thoughts drifting to the days when his father had been around. His dad had taught him how to fix cars, how to work with his hands, how to always do his best no matter what the world expected of him. But he had never taught Jamal how to dream beyond what he could see. No one ever had. The world Jamal knew was small, confined to his neighborhood and the occasional trip to the corner store. He had always assumed that success was for people who were born with opportunities, with wealth and connections, things he didn't have. His mother worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, his younger brother needed help with homework, and the rent was always due. There wasn't much room for dreams, let alone a grand ambition to make something of himself. But then there was Richard, a man who seemed to have it all. His expensive suits, his fancy car, the power he wielded. He had everything Jamal thought was out of reach, yet he was offering Jamal a chance to be a part of it. A chance to step out of his limited world and into something bigger. The offer didn't seem real. No one just handed out opportunities like that. Richard had to want something in return. He had to be using Jamal for something. But even as he thought it, Jamal couldn't dismiss the sincerity in Richard's eyes. He wasn't just being nice. He was offering something real. Maybe Jamal had been looking at this the wrong way. Maybe Richard wasn't offering a shortcut to wealth, but a chance to learn. Jamal had always been good with his hands. His father had seen to that. He had an innate ability to fix things, whether it was a broken toy, a malfunctioning bike, or even the neighbors leaking faucets. But fixing things was one thing. Fixing his life, changing his future, that was another. The next afternoon, Jamal stood outside the school, watching as the students streamed out, all eager to head home. Some of them hopped into shiny cars, others waited for their parents to pick them up. Jamal didn't have a car to rush to. He was used to walking home, or catching the bus if he could spare the change. But that day, he had something else on his mind. Jamal pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found Richard's number. He had debated calling for days, unsure if it was the right move. But the offer had been weighing on him so heavily that he couldn't ignore it anymore. He had to know if this was real. He had to know if he was willing to take the chance. With a deep breath, he hit dial. It only took a few rings before Richard's calm, familiar voice answered. "Jamal, how's it going?" "I've been thinking about what you said," Jamal replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "About the opportunity. I want to know more. I want to see what you're offering." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and then Richard's voice softened. "I'm glad to hear that. I thought you'd be interested. Come by my office tomorrow morning. I'll show you what I mean." The next day, Jamal walked into the sleek building Richard had taken him to before. The polished floors reflected the light, and the air felt cooler, sharper, almost foreign to him. Jamal tried to push down the nerves that had settled in his stomach. He had seen places like this in movies, never thinking he'd ever be in one. But today, he was here, and he was about to take the first step into a world that had always seemed out of reach. He walked up to the front desk, where a young woman in a neat business suit greeted him with a smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Mr. Langston," Jamal said, his voice betraying just a hint of uncertainty. The woman nodded and gave him directions to Richard's office, a sleek, modern suite on the top floor. Jamal's heart was racing as he made his way through the building, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he finally reached the door, he hesitated for a moment before knocking. "Come in," Richard called from inside. Jamal opened the door to find Richard standing by the window, his back to him. He turned around as Jamal entered, his face lighting up with a warm smile. "You made it. I'm glad." Jamal took a seat across from Richard, who sat behind a large wooden desk. There were no intimidating piles of paperwork or strange documents. Instead, the desk was neat, organized. Richard's demeanor was just as calm and welcoming as it had been when Jamal first met him. "So, what exactly do you want to show me?" Jamal asked, his curiosity piqued. Richard leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I want to show you the world of opportunities. Not just in business, but in how you can apply your skills and interests in ways that will allow you to grow. Whether it's in mechanics, tech, or another field. But it all starts with your mindset. Are you ready to learn, Jamal?" Jamal took a deep breath. "Yeah, I think I'm ready." In that moment, Jamal knew this was the turning point he had been searching for. The future wasn't something that just happened. It was something you built. And for the first time in his life, Jamal felt like he had the chance to build something that was truly his. The weeks following Jamal's decision felt like a whirlwind. Every morning, he woke up earlier than usual, his mind racing with excitement and uncertainty. He would walk into Richard Langston's office, a place that had once seemed like a distant fantasy, and every day, he was greeted with new lessons. It wasn't just about business or mechanics, it was about life, about seeing beyond the confines of what he had always known. Richard had taken him under his wing, showing him not just the ropes of running a business, but teaching him how to think, how to push beyond his comfort zone. Jamal was absorbing everything, his mind opening to new possibilities he never thought possible. He learned the ins and outs of managing people, the intricate details of managing money, and the art of problem-solving on a scale much larger than he had ever imagined. But as Jamal's world grew, so did the weight of his responsibilities. His mom had noticed the changes in him, his late-night studying and his newfound confidence. She saw the determination in his eyes, and though she didn't understand the full scope of what he was doing, she supported him. Still, the pressure to succeed weighed heavily on Jamal. He knew what was at stake. This wasn't just an opportunity for him. It was a chance to change everything for his family, to give them a future that wasn't dictated by the struggles of their past. One afternoon, Richard took Jamal out for lunch at a small cafe, away from the office. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow across the street. Richard watched as Jamal picked at his food, clearly lost in thought. Finally, he broke the silence. "You've been quiet lately. What's on your mind?" Richard asked, his voice gentle. Jamal looked up, his eyes filled with an uncertainty he hadn't felt in weeks. "I've been thinking a lot. About my mom, about my family. It's like, I've been given this chance to change everything, but I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to disappoint anyone." Richard leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. "It's normal to feel that way, Jamal. But remember, success isn't about getting everything perfect. It's about making the most of the opportunities you're given. You're not just doing this for yourself, you're doing it for your family. And that's something to be proud of." Jamal nodded, the weight of Richard's words sinking in. It wasn't about perfection. It was about growth, about doing the best with what he had. He wasn't alone in this. His mom, his brother, even his late father, they were all part of this journey. And somehow, that realization gave him strength. As they walked back to the office, Jamal felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced before. The uncertainty had faded, replaced by a quiet determination. This was his path, and he was ready to walk it, one step at a time. Weeks turned into months. Jamal's life began to transform in ways he never could have imagined. He helped Richard with projects, worked alongside a team of experts, and began to apply what he had learned in real-world scenarios. He wasn't just a kid from the neighborhood anymore. He was becoming someone who had something to offer, someone with skills, knowledge, and most importantly, the will to succeed. One night, as Jamal was sitting at the kitchen table, studying for an upcoming business meeting, his mom walked in. She watched him for a moment, the pride in her eyes evident, before she spoke. "You've come a long way, Jamal. I don't understand all this business stuff you're doing, but I see how hard you're working. I see how you're changing. And I'm proud of you." Jamal's heart swelled with emotion. His mom had always been his rock, the one who believed in him when no one else did. Hearing those words, knowing how far they had both come, was more than he had ever expected. He stood up and wrapped her in a tight hug. "I'm going to make sure we're okay, Mom. I'm going to make sure we have everything we need." She pulled back slightly, wiping away a tear. "I know you will, baby. I know you will." Months later, Jamal found himself standing in front of a new building, one that was his responsibility. Richard had taken him under his wing, showing him the ropes of the business world, and now Jamal was in charge of his own project. The young man who had once walked home in the heat, uncertain about his future, now stood on the edge of something much bigger. As he looked up at the building, a wave of emotion washed over him. This was his dream made real. He had come so far, but he knew that it wasn't just about the success. It was about the journey, the lessons he had learned, the people who had helped him, and the sacrifices that had gotten him here. Jamal's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a text from Richard. "I'm proud of you, Jamal. You've earned this." A smile tugged at Jamal's lips as he typed back. "I couldn't have done it without you." He paused for a moment, then looked up at the sky. The sun was setting, just like it had on that first day Richard had taken him to lunch. Only now, Jamal wasn't looking at the world as an outsider. He was a part of it. And as the warm orange light bathed the city, he knew that his life had been forever changed. He wasn't just a kid from a small neighborhood anymore. He was someone who had taken his chance and turned it into something real. And though he didn't know what the future held, he knew one thing for sure. He was ready for it. As the day ended and the lights of the city flickered on, Jamal smiled to himself. The journey had just begun. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Jake's selflessness and Emma's unexpected kindness? Did you see the twist coming when the stranded driver turned out to be a billionaire? We'd love to hear your opinions on how the story unfolded. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. Stay tuned for more stories that inspire and captivate hearts.